Hey everyone, welcome to Educator HQ. This is a special edition today. We're going to be talking with Doreen Blyth over in Western Australia, our first guest from the West. Thank you, Doreen. We're going to be talking to Doreen about a meeting that she attended over in Perth on the weekend, the town hall event for the United Workers Union educators. Great to hear Doreen's summary and rundown on what happened over in the West. Doreen, welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation. What do I think of the meeting? Hanging out with educators is just some of the best fun that you can have. It makes a real change from online engagement. It makes a real change from just responding to comments. It makes a change from sitting in your own staff room and rehashing the same arguments to find out what's going on everywhere else. And look, it was serious, don't get me wrong, but it was also a huge amount of fun. It was quite unifying. It was, there were private sector, private for purpose, private for profit. There were tiny community-based centres there. There was community-based chains there. The lot.
That's great.
There was even a daycare educator who wandered in. I mean, what more can you want?
And it's very empowering to know that your story's shared, that the sector's educators are feeling the same, and just that, as you said, unifying, empowering event to be able to get together and go, hey, what are we going to do next?
Yeah, and it was very much that. I think when you advertise a meeting, I think it's really difficult for people to get a sense of that, to get a sense of what you're going to get out of it personally. It was great to see some old hands from around the sector coming into the meeting and literally rolling up their sleeves saying, right, how are we going to fix this? And there was some very young educators coming in, maybe looking around the room a bit nervous. This is my first union meeting, that sort of stuff. And there were people all in the mid-range who were saying, no, enough's enough. This is it. There's got to be a vote today. We've got to make some decisions because we want to move forward. We don't want to keep going around in this spiral of complaint, not fixed, complaint, not fixed. That's behind us now. There's very real stuff on the table.
Absolutely. And I think, the sector, we've been at the, a lot of people talk about the front line during COVID, etc. We're exhausted. We've been here before. And, that sense of anger, but also the sense of hope, because we've got a government that we know has listened to us in the past and that has acted in the past. So where do we need to be? What space do we need to be in to get them in that position again? So
yeah, a mate of mine did an analysis of the previous three federal governments on what their attitudes in the media, in Parliament, etc., were to early childhood educators, and the number of words, and were there meaningful statements or was it just fluff, that sort of stuff. And there's been more policy statements, there's been more meaningful discussions about educators from this government, federal government, than there has been in a very long time. From a West Australian perspective, we didn't have a lot of the things happening during COVID that happened on the eastern seaboard. So whilst people like to joke about West Australians being a little bit different, it in fact was an incredibly different experience. Knowing what was going on over in the eastern seaboard and being in Western Australia, we moved along. So in this centre itself, we had very little COVID. Some educators have had it since. I think we've had more COVID since the lockdowns have all lifted than before. We've had that time and we've used it a little differently. So we've moved along and been able to move along in different ways, but we've also lacked the advantage. A lot of educators on the eastern seaboard used a lot of lockdown time for studying or for professional advancement. A lot of educators used it for lobbying governments. But we've been still on the mill, sort of turning up to work every day, that sort of thing. So we've kind of had a two-speed professional growth program around the country, haven't we? But one of the things that we've started to focus on in Western Australia is what the hell's going on right now? I mean, is this just about wages? And predominantly, yes, it is. Is this about educator wellbeing? Well, wages are part of my wellbeing, thanks very much. So don't offer me a cupcake or a massage. Just pay me. But is this going to define us and define who we are? And one of the things a lot of us started to do was look at, surprisingly enough, the Early Childhood Australia, the ECA Code of Ethics, because there's this amazing line. You know, you've got the great big Code of Ethics in the big frame, somewhere up in your centre, and if you don't, you should. One, I think it's on the bottom left-hand corner, but one of the lines in it is that I will advocate for my profession. And I think that is the most empowering tool. If you're not comfortable with going to talk to your manager, your owner, the administration system at your workplace about a union action, you've been given a gift on a plate. Take to them the Early Childhood Australia Code of Ethics, point to the line about, I will advocate for my profession, and say, can we put this in the quip? Can we make this part of our action, our unifying action here, that we're all going to work together on this?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And it works. I mean, here we took a huge number of our staff out on the walkout last year. We shut the centre. And we talked about unity, professional identity. We talked about the future. We made a pact to never talk about the past and failed attempts in the past. And we talked about what we can do for the future. And it was so much fun. And that's when we discovered that it should be fun. Being unified, being empowered, hanging out with people who are professionals in your chosen profession actually is a really good recipe for time well spent. So that's what we did here. We used the ECA Code of Ethics, and in other centres too, they're using it to help them define who they are as individual professionals. I mean, look at what nurses did. Nursing's the biggest union in the country. But what a lot of people don't know, it's also got the biggest participation rate, active participation in campaigns. That's how they do it. That's how they are succeeding.
And I think in early childhood, we have to move away from the thought of needing to be convinced to join the union or convinced to attend something, and have that conviction within us to go, I don't need convincing. I'm going to go because, you know, this is something that's really important to me as an educator, and my identity as an educator is to want to be seen as a professional, to not be seen as a babysitter, to know that I'm getting up every morning and being valued for what I do, not just, you know, you do a great job, but for that value to come through to your bank balance as well, you know. So we need to move away from convincing people, you know, that this is a great thing to be part of, to being convicted that this is what we should be doing. And that shift is just going to take some more discussions and some more understanding.
Yeah, it sure is. One of the things that we found here with the educators, and in metropolitan Western Australia as well, is that educators are over being told what they should do, what they shouldn't do. If the National Quality Framework has a great number of benefits, and it surely does, and God, I hope it does, because I helped write it. But if the National Quality Framework has a whole bunch of benefits for children and for the profession, it also has some problems. One of the problems is it tells educators what to do all the time. Instead of saying, hang on for a second, educators, what do you reckon? How do you want to do this? Now, granted, a lot of the regulatory authorities and the SECRA have moved more towards in that direction, but still on the paper it tells us what to do. We're actually more mature profession now. You're right, we don't need convincing. We need something to do. We need actions. And one of the outcomes from the town hall meeting the other day was voting on action. And there will be votes at the online meeting as well. And it's about time people said, okay, I'm making a decision as a professional. This is what I want to have happen. Short term and then medium term. And if they don't listen to us, then we're going to have some serious discussions and some serious action. And having shut a centre down last year, a whole bunch of us have learned it's actually a lot easier than you think.
Yeah.
And as PD day, as professional learning day, as CPD time, whatever you want to call it, regardless of where you come from around the country, it's one of the most unifying experiences that the team here have ever had.
And the other thing with that too is it's a conversation piece with families to get families to understand and to be on board the importance of how we feel about shutdowns and walk-offs and everything.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, sorry. I was laughing because what flashed into my mind when you started to say that was a conversation that I had with one of the dads just before the shutdown. And I thought, okay, right, I'll go and explain. And he just sort of stopped me. I was about 10 words in to, my pre-prepared speech, talking to families in the foyer about it, what was coming up then. And he just laughed and he said, you don't have to explain. Go for it. And I thought, oh, hang on for a second. Are we mistaken in our communication with families? Are we just so involved in teaching and intentional practice and provocations that we've failed to identify the fact that actually the majority of families are on our side now? And the data from the Minderoo Foundation from Thrive by 5 says the majority of families are in your court now. It's okay. It's all right to stand up. And I think that in itself is unbelievably powerful. So tackling families and telling families, maybe we need to change our tone. We certainly have here, certainly since I was, put in my box that day. And we just said, our profession is in pain. We've got a staffing crisis. We've got a way of solving this. It's going to take some steps. This is what we're going to do. We'll see you when we reopen next week. And to which the families have gone, yep, okay, right, good luck. 100% of them. And whilst some families had to make arrangements, sometimes we forget that we're so busy worrying about them that that's the cause of learning to not worry about ourselves.
Yeah, and look, that's one of the things that have come up in the last 2 chats we've had with allied health professionals, is that for educators, they need to take flight of airplane emergency procedures and put the mask on yourself, put the oxygen mask on yourself, because if there are no educators, as we know right now, with rooms shutting down and adverts for educators skyrocketing, without educators, there's no sector. So put the oxygen mask on yourself. And what is it that we have to do? Because we are very well versed of putting ourselves last and everyone else first. And it is a shift in is a shift in self. Like, we have to be selfish as educators right now and go, you know what? We've done all these other things and all these other actions, but we have to really put our foot down and put ourselves first and make this happen. And I know a lot of educators missed out on going to meetings over the weekend across the country, and I was one of them because life just got in the way. But I'll be online, and I encourage everyone who's listening to this podcast that if you didn't get to the meetings on the weekend, please try and get online. I'll put the link up in the comments. Speak to your co-workers, speak to your owner, your manager, your director, and explain to them, we've got to be in this together. This is a win-win for everyone, and we need the government to fund it because we know that parents can't pay more. We know that, the government knows that. But people have to get to these meetings to understand, what's the plan? How are we going to fix this?
That's what is actually going to be discussed at this meeting coming up, is what's the plan? This isn't a talk fest. This is what's the plan. Finding out how the process works. Well, that was fascinating, but it's not up everybody's alley. But finding out how the process works helps you understand the timeline. And I've been tweeting furiously for the last couple of years. And every now and again, I throw something up saying, what's the damn timeline? We now have a picture of what the timeline might look like. And what's discussed at the meeting will tell you about the timeline. But it'll also ask you, so we're going to fight for this? I think people underestimate how important numbers are turning up to meetings. And I think people underestimate how important it is to learn what's going on in your profession. Are you prepared to accept a lesser deal? I know I sure as hell am not. The government owe me 25%. Well, they owe me a lot more than that, but they owe me 25%.
Yes. Well, let's not talk about back pay over the however many years you've been working in the sector.
We're not going to talk about reparations, but let me tell you, you know, my attitude is I've put in, to be honest, I really don't care whether past moves or past actions have been successful or not, because I don't look at things in those black and white terms. What I look at it as is that was a stepping stone towards where we're at now, and we are within shouting distance. But if we don't shout, we're not going to go the distance. So ignore the past, because that was a journey, not a lack of success. It was a journey. We're at this stage of our journey now. And look, you know, as you can probably tell, I'm not young. And, you know, I was there when nurses got professional rates. You know, I was there in the marches in Melbourne, shutting hospitals down in Perth and other capital cities. This is how it's done. And once it's done, it's done. People still respect you in the morning. Your employer's still going to be talking to you. Your job's not at threat. Protection is provided under law for all of that. But also the employers actually are at the table as well, so they're participants, so why the hell shouldn't you be? Just equally as they are, because you have a place at the table too, and now's the time. So go along to the meeting, speak up, ask the same stupid question 16 times. You probably have guessed that I was quite comfortable in doing that in the Perth meeting. I had a list of questions from a whole bunch of staff who life got in the way of, and they couldn't go. Some of them couldn't go because they were at their second job. You know, we can't ask them to not do that. So I took their questions across. We asked a huge number of questions. Every single question was answered. Even when I repeated them, because I didn't quite get the explanation, every question was answered, and I knew exactly where we were going to go, and we're really ready for it. At this centre, the stunningly gorgeous Unicare Centre, if you're looking for a job.
Great plug.
Oh, it is the most beautiful place. I fought hard to get a job here. So this profession that we've got deserves a whole bunch of people staying. And if this is the price that it takes, participate.
Exactly. And we need to get back the ones that we've lost.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But we also need to nurture our colleagues in a very different way. I call it applying the National Quality Framework to educators. Okay, so we apply different methods of communication, and this podcast, amazing method of communication. And I'm sure you'll need to edit it down a little bit because I say too much. But it's also, how can I say this? Okay. We apply the NQF to children. Let's try applying the NQF to educators. So it's not just wanting past educators back, it's treating disabled educators with more respect. It's treating educators with family needs with more respect. It's treating ourselves with more respect. It's taking the breaks when you need to take the breaks. It's refusing overtime when you need to refuse the overtime. We're so empowered now. The law backs all of that. We are so empowered. Let's all take that one step forward and go, yeah, hang on for a second. I may, not be paid terribly well. I've got that sorted. I'm going to the town hall meeting online. But there are some things I can do in my workplace as well to just advance the cause of being an educator in my workplace. But we're in charge of that. Let's stop waiting for someone else to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fast.
Exactly.
So there we go. In Western Australia, we laughed a lot at the meeting, and we did laugh a lot at the town hall meeting. Some of it, to be frank, is unrepeatable and hysterical. Met up with old friends, made some new friends, found out what was happening in other services. Believe it or not, we even swapped curriculum ideas over
Right.
the food afterwards, because we're educators, what the hell. But in the end, we got something out of it. We got the plan. I know what the plan is. We're not going to talk about it here. You need to come along to the online town.
Absolutely. So everyone watching, if you didn't attend a town hall meeting, in the comments, we will be putting the link to register for that. And we both implore you all to get to the town hall meeting, spread the word. And if for whatever reason you are unable to attend and you've got questions, write them in the comments. And I'm happy to be the representative for Educator HQ listeners. If you've got questions, I'll ask them for you. But get to it yourself if you can. Because, you know, as Doreen said, it's power in numbers, and we know we've got the numbers. There's 190,000 of you out there, and none of you will argue that you don't deserve change. So be the change you want to see and get to the meetings. And Doreen, thank you so much for coming on for a chat.
And hi to all the West Australians who are here. Let's make the national quality framework truly national with a national wage rate. So let's all get involved in this. Okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, Doreen. Thanks for coming on for a chat.
Bye.
Bye for now.